Well, welcome everyone to our second in a series of professional development topics. And today's topic is managing behavior without rewards. Quite a few of you have signed up for it, and obviously it is a hot topic. I will share with you my own journey through this material. But just before I get started, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Eva de Gosztonyi. I'm the coordinator of the Center of Excellence for Behavior Management, together with Catherine Cora, who's here with me as well. And I am also a school psychologist who has worked in the field for many, many years. So I have lots of experience to draw from, lots of things that have worked well and lots of mistakes that I've made. And so this is where I'm coming from in terms of sharing this material with you. And Catherine, I don't know if you want to say a few words of welcome.
Well, welcome everybody. This is definitely a topic that's to my heart. Given working as a behavior consultant, oftentimes I do get that question from staff and also from parents about rewards, and many people seem to believe that it is harmless. And so I'm really happy that you'll be able to shed some light on that. So thank you.
Great. So without further ado, let me go and get my PowerPoint and get myself organized here. Great. Well, managing behavior without rewards. I have to let you know from the very start that when I started my career as a school psychologist, rewards were very much something that was part of the tools that we offered to people. And for quite a number of years, I was all part of what I offered to schools in ways of managing behavior. But as we all know, when we gain experience working with children, working with challenging situations, it started to niggle in the back of my mind that maybe this wasn't the best way to go. It didn't seem to bring the effects that we thought that it should bring. But I didn't really know how to explain it. As many of you know, I use the developmental paradigm of Dr. Gordon Neufeld, and it became clear through listening to his work and understanding it that this was not a way that was really helpful from a developmental perspective. And I will go through that tonight. So I was very lucky because I was able to work with a number of people who were interested in trying out new ways. And we started a class probably close to 15 years ago at Riverside School Board called the NEST class, and it still exists in some form. And that was where the first place where we started working with children with severe behavior problems without using rewards for them. Then I also worked in a high school program at Western Quebec. And again, we tried to avoid rewards. And then a number of other things happened as well, because those were special kids and maybe, there were things that we wanted to consider about them. But for me, besides the theoretical perspective, besides the wanting to do it right for children, seeing the benefits of it as well, where the penny really dropped for me was when parents started talking to me about rewards and reward systems and agendas and things like that, and what it did at home for the child. So what I'm going to share with you today is a series of just things that I've put together, material that I've come across. I'm going to be referring a lot to Alfie Cohen, or on my slides, it's called AK, Alfie Cohen, who wrote a book called Punished by Rewards, and I'll show you a picture of it in a moment. And just looking through his material and then also sharing my own experiences and just basically laying out for you the issues around using rewards. And honestly, I'll tell you, some of it I knew, some of it I intuitively knew, and some of it really knocked me off my feet as I looked into it more deeply. So here we go. But why are they so popular? Well, it's a common practice. Everyone uses them. We've always used them. When there's a behavior challenge, it's the go-to place. The claim is that they are evidence-based, and there's research out there. One can quote all sorts of research. When you've got a really challenging group, my goodness, you put in a behavior program and it makes a difference, but usually only in the short term. We figure they create optimal learning conditions. Children can't learn in classrooms where other children are misbehaving. So we want to set it up so that everyone can learn. Seem to be fun. Kids love getting rewards, and it's thought to be harmless. And here's the thought that comes to my mind once I looked at all of the information. Really? So let's go through this. We're going to also look at it from a variety of different perspectives, from a developmental neuroscientific perspective, from a learning perspective, social emotional abilities, relationship and attachment, emotion. And these are all ways in which we kind of come at this particular issue, and one of them or the other one might speak more to any one of you. I don't want this to be an academic debate. If you don't agree with me about the research, that's fine, but hopefully some of it will start to make sense for you and help you understand why it is not as innocuous or harmless as we might think it is. What are we talking about? And again, this isn't comprehensive, but behavior charts, star charts for groups, star charts for individuals, tracking sheets, end of day evaluation in the agenda, and digital behavior management systems, which have just come about in the last few years. Are they evidence-based? Well, in the short term, the evidence does show that external behaviors do improve when incentives are given. But one of the things, and this is one of the things Alfie Cohen brings to us, is he says people don't follow it over the long term. They followed for a couple of weeks, maybe for a month, and then they see the evidence, the behavior has changed. Check, it is evidence-based. But we all know from our own experience in our classrooms with the children that we work with that it doesn't generalize, first of all, to non-reward situations. So has the behavior really changed? It seems that the rewards have to be changed and increased to be able to maintain that behavior. Then we start to realize students begin to expect rewards for standard behavior and get very disappointed when they don't get them. And Alfie Cohen, in all of the research that he did, he said no controlled study has ever found a long-term improvement in the quality of work as a result of any kind of incentive plan. And yet those plans are as popular as ever. And we can say the same thing, I think, for reward systems in our classrooms and in our schools. The other thing which we need to sometimes make a nuance about is the difference between evidence-based and evidence-informed. The more we know about the neuroscience, about how the brain develops, the more informed we are about those things, the less likely we are to believe that something like a reward system can actually have a profound effect on a child's behavior and development. So evidence-based tends to refer to research-based, but evidence-informed says, we've got some knowledge now that would predict. And it would be lovely if we could have studies. People have always said to me, why didn't you study the kids at the NEST program? Why didn't you study the kids at the program at Western Quebec? Well, it's really hard to document true behavior change, especially because it's so complex. So developmentally, using the neuroscience, Alfie Cohen basically says rewards are not actually solutions at all. They give quick fixes. They're gimmicks with quick fixes that mask problems and ignore reasons, and they never look below the surface. And we are now truly understanding how much lies below the surface. Gordon Neufeld tells us that the neuroscience now informs us that most troubled behavior is actually driven, deeply rooted in impulse and emotion. And what tempers emotions and instincts and impulses? Well, it's a well-developed and well-functioning prefrontal cortex and a robust corpus callosum, a well-developed left brain and right brain, so many parts of our brain. Jay Gee tells us it takes 25 years to develop a human brain that is capable of mature behavior. And the brain grows from within. The prefrontal cortex, cerebellum, corpus callosum, right and left hemisphere all continue to develop dramatically well through to 25 years and more. So it doesn't really make a lot of intuitive sense to think, how is it possible that a sticker or a star or a reward would actually grow a brain so that behavior could change? Behavior comes from inside of us. It doesn't come from the outside. So Alfie Cohen did a huge study of this, and 25 years later, he's got a 25th anniversary. The book is called Punished by Rewards, and the many conclusions in there. And again, if I had a research team, we could tell you which page to look, but I encourage you to buy the book, leaf through it, you'll find these kinds of quotes. Some of the things he found: people actually do inferior work when they are enticed with money, grades, or other incentives. Programs that are used to rewards to change people's behavior are ineffective in the long run. As we know, you promise a goodie to a kid, it's going to be temporary obedience. And this is now where the rubber really hits the road, is that the more we use artificial inducements to motivate people, the more they lose interest in what we're bribing them to do. So it's not just that they won't do it if they're not getting a reward, they actually lose interest in the actual thing that we're asking them for. They did the felt marker study. Children were rewarded for using markers and other children weren't. And as soon as they went and the children who were rewarded, when they were given a variety of toys to play with, they did not choose the markers. It's kind of like the reward made them stop being interested in that. And another comment or another what Cohen is telling us, he said, rewards turn play into work and work into drudgery. Do they really change the behavior? Well, even when you're looking in 1975, this is what struck me. 1975, Firestone and Douglas basically said that even for children who were highly distractible or highly hyperactive, didn't actually work. When they were given rewards, they actually responded more impulsively. 1983, on reaction times, as soon as rewards stopped coming, they had the consequence of undermining performance as soon as they stopped coming, and maybe even from the beginning. Richard Kerwin basically said, bribes and rewards tend to produce finishers rather than learners. So in effect, yes, kids can get work done, but they're trying to finish it, not trying to really engage with it. They become less inclined to explore ideas, to think creatively, to take chances, because you know what? They figured out how to get the reward. This occurred to me way back when I was a high school student. I had a friend who was very, very, very motivated to get high marks. And I told her one afternoon that I had been reading this really interesting historical novel. And she looked at me and she said, why are you reading the novel? Why aren't you studying? I said, well, because it's interesting. I want to know more about the world. Oh, she says, I don't have time to read books like that. I have to read so that I can get high marks. So she might have gotten high marks, but I think I knew more about history than she did. Offered a reward, people usually take the easiest task possible. I'm going to do whatever I can, the least that I can, to get the reward. But when children aren't rewarded, they actually pick things that are a little bit harder. It's a natural impulse. Dr. Neufeld calls that the emergent energy, where we try to, where we're motivated to move and to grow. But that comes from us spontaneously. That doesn't come from the outside. When rewards are used, activity increases while the quality of work decreases. So yes, we will walk into a classroom where there's a behavior reward system, and we will see children busily working. But do we know about the quality of their work? Are they harmless? Well, this is where it gets really tricky because, for example, they were just trying to get kids to think about trying a beverage called kefir. And some were just asked to drink it. Others were praised. Others were promised a reward or a treat. And of course, and this is where the evidence would come in, children who were given a reward or a verbal praise drank more of the kefir than other people. Therefore, rewards work. But as little as a week later, what they found was these children were significantly found it less appealing than they did before, whereas the ones who were offered no rewards liked it just as much or even more. The ones who weren't offered a reward were willing to try something different and give it a chance. Even more devastating, and this one's done in 2014, extrinsic rewards undermined altruistic tendencies in 20-month-olds. Now, a 20-month-old is not even 2 years old yet, can barely toddle. And they were able to observe helping behavior in these very young children. And yet what they found was when they received a material reward, afterwards, they were less likely to engage in further helping compared with the ones who had received social praise or no reward at all. And again, I think we have to be very careful because social praise can seem like a reward, but definitely any kind of a reward basically squelched the desire to help. So two things we're learning from this. One, there is an intrinsic desire in all of us to help. It's called our alpha instincts. We all have it. It's part of our attachment instincts. And yet, when those are rewarded, it tends to disappear. It tends to not be as available. The children don't tend to want to do it. This makes me think about So many of the practices that we're doing in our schools right now to encourage children to develop good social emotional habits or abilities, what are we doing when we're rewarding kindness? Alfie Cohen said it, and I couldn't find this in his book, but I know I heard it probably in an interview that he did. He said, when we reward a naturally occurring kind behavior, we actually make it into a selfish behavior. Now children will do it to get the reward. And I was really thinking about that because I was walking into school one day, and just in this kind of came around when I was thinking about this stuff, and as I was walking with another teacher, and we had our arms full of things, and a young girl opened the door for us. And so I was thinking to myself, now, what's the difference between praising her and giving her a reward and thanking her? And it's exactly that. It's not that we wouldn't acknowledge her behavior, but we have to be so careful how we do it. We could have just nodded and smiled, which meant I noticed what you did, I appreciate what you did, and that's good enough for us. In a school where there would have been a reward system for kind behavior, she would have perhaps gotten a star. And inadvertently, what would we have done? Taken away that natural impulse to help. The other thing that occurred to me is when we do put in a system for rewarding good behaviors, it can make a huge difference. And I saw this happening in a classroom. Sadly, there was a teacher who was having a very, very difficult time. She was a specialty teacher. So any of you that are teaching, specialty subjects and go from class to class and have, I don't know how many groups of children a day, you know what a challenge it is to get those kids to listen to you because you're not their regular classroom teacher and so on and so forth. She had a particularly hard time for a variety of different reasons, and she was doing her absolute best. She was a very kind-hearted, sweet teacher who really wanted to be a good teacher, but the children were really frustrating her. And so I watched her one day. I was asked to observe, and I watched her one day come into the classroom, and the children were like rolling around on the floor and doing all sorts of things. And so she immediately had to start managing the behavior. So she kind of looked like this. And again, I don't blame her. Probably in my early days, I would have been tempted to do the same thing. Now, I didn't ask her to put in a reward system, but somebody else did. And the next time I came in to observe, without knowing that the system was in there, I saw a chart on the board with groups. The kids were now put into groups, and there were groups there. And she walked into the classroom, and the kids were still not behaving very well. But it occurred to her that she needed to use her reward system. So this is what she did. She started off first like, come on, children, that's enough. And then she remembered, oh, and she walked over to the board and she started putting stars on for the groups that were behaving. And the thought that occurred to me is, oh my goodness, whose behavior was changed by the reward system? It really was the teacher's behavior that changed first.
Yeah.
And, again, which person would I prefer to listen to? The one who's smiling at me. Now, the thing we have to remember is that attachment instincts are engaged when we as the adults collect a child's eyes, a nod, and a smile. And you know what? Reward systems makes adults smile. The only thing we have to be careful about, and this did happen in that classroom, and I've heard it happen in other places too, if it's not authentic pleasure and delight in their presence, after a while, kids start saying, I don't really care about the rewards, who cares? So we have to be very careful because we can't manipulate the behavior through attachment behaviors. We actually have to want the children to attach to us. And so when we think about attachment, you have to remember attachments are a preeminent need. Humans are naturally attuned to that which can increase or improve attachment or make attachments better. That emotion is called pursuit. We all have it. Your spouse is off traveling, promised to text you as soon as he arrived or she arrived at their destination. An hour later, they have not yet texted you. Immediately, what do? Our emotion of pursuit kicks in. We text them. Did you arrive safely? Is it okay? What happened? Just let me know you're all right. That's the emotion of pursuit. It pushes us to make sure and to bring us back into that relationship. Now, what we have to remember is that a reward system makes it very clear which behaviors will make an adult happy. Now, unfortunately, though, the attachment becomes conditional. The children, and this is not what we meant to do, but this is how it feels to children. For the teacher or my parents to be happy with me, to want me in their presence, I have to be good. I have to listen, pay attention, all these things. And so now the attachment starts to become somewhat conditional. And I have to tell you, this particular statement that a parent told me about their child really, really knocked me for a loop. Mummy, I could have gotten 45 points today, but I only got 35 points. This was a digital system. Can you still love me? Now, there wasn't a single adult who envisioned that a reward system like that would cause a child to fundamentally ask whether the parents still love them. But that's our adult perspective. How does it feel to be the child? And again, different kind of systems like this chart system here. So this was, many of you have seen this because I've talked about this before, but bottom line is, after the first few weeks of school, which are the children who are in yellow, orange, or green or red. We know who they are. So really, why do we need to keep trying to keep working with the whole system? Because if they would change their behavior, they would have by now. And we know that what is it that's interfering? It's immaturity and emotional needs, which are the reasons behind most misbehavior. And unfortunately, the warning system can cause shame or alarm, or it can displace the behavior. The child is very good while the system is there, but goes out for recess and has an explosion because all of their frustration that they've kept in now comes out on the playground. And really, we should be now, after the month of September, using our time for preventative interventions that I will talk about shortly. I'll read this very quickly. I remember, this is from Nikki Sabiston. I remembered my own son coming home from kindergarten day after day in tears because he just couldn't stay on the green. He wanted so badly to behave. He wanted to please his teachers. He wanted mom and dad to be proud of him, but his impulsivity did not allow him to keep himself in check for the whole school day. Every time she moved that clip, he was being reminded that he wasn't good enough for his teacher. That kindergarten was one of the hardest years of our family has endured. It is utterly heartbreaking to hear your child say things like, I hate myself. Why can't I be good? My teacher hates me. I'm not good enough. Tears are dropping on the keyboard as I remember those moments. Now that he's being treated for ADHD, he's much happier at school and doing well, but that color chart just about destroyed my son. And I have heard those stories over and over and over again. She comes to the same conclusion. They track behavior and don't change it. There are cultural expectations that some of our kids just can't do. This was an interesting one. The chart makes the assumption before the kid ever crossed the threshold of the classroom that he is going to misbehave. As much as we try to make that chart seem like a reminder and not a negative thing, it is embarrassing to many children. And even the ones who are always on green feel the stress. And this, again, is something that many of these kids talk about. Mummy, I don't know. I feel so sad for Billy because he's always in the yellow. He's always in the red. We don't know how to help him. They feel that. Children are empathetic and they feel that. The agenda at the end of the day, and again, many of you have heard me talk about this, but let me very quickly just go through it. A red face or a yellow face puts the child into the idea, because remember, the agenda is being brought home. Now they have to anticipate separation. Just remember, when you have to tell your spouse about the parking ticket that you got or about the speeding ticket that you got, why are they the last ones to know? Because you don't want to see the disappointment in their eyes or hear the disappointment, even though you might have been. And this is exactly the situation. Our children are bringing home the bad news. The parents are disappointed, of course, and they want to correct the behavior, but they can't do it overnight. My sister-in-law, whose son was very, very young when he entered kindergarten, said, he'd come home with the yellow face. We didn't know how to fix him. And my sister-in-law was very, very involved with her kids. She ended up finally going into the classroom to help her son. But she said after the fourth week, we didn't know what else to tell him. They're both frustrated. They're both alarmed. There's no rest. And even the kindest parent who says to the child, now, honey, try and figure out what you can do tomorrow. Let's see what we can do. Remember to do this. Remember to do that. After a while, the child gets so discouraged because they can't remember everything. And it just increases the likelihood of the poor behavior if they're not well rested. And I have heard about Sunday night meltdowns from the good children. One little girl every Sunday night would have a huge anxiety attack. Finally, she was able to tell her mother, what if this week I'm not able to get a green face every day? This kid had had a green face September, October, November, December, January. And yet she was terrified that this would be the week she couldn't do it. And because we are the ones that have to give that news that the child has to bring, we might not be seen as the safest people for children. It increases anxiety, or they start not caring and the agenda goes out the window and the kid says, I don't care. We are creatures of emotion. Emotions move us. Behavior is an expression of what's happening emotionally. And the thing about it is when we try to control those symptoms, true change can't actually happen. And most of you probably know this. You knew that you had to be really patient with somebody, and you were patient with them. And then 2 seconds later, you exploded at somebody else. You know, some of you probably are very patient at school, a little bit less patient at home. We can't always, just managing our symptoms doesn't really deal with the situation. In fact, as they seek expression, the student who's good will often erupt with emotion outside of the class or at home.
Mhm.
Um, and the other thing which it really you think, oh, it's just a reward. Well, Kerwin calls them bribes. He says they're a threat in disguise. Withholding rewards can be used as a threat hammer very easily. The truth is that threats and bribes are two sides of the same coin, which is basically around control. And the other thing he says is that the more we tell children how good they are, the greater the fall if they cannot live up to all that praise. And Dr. Neufeld talks to us about the sixth level of attachment, which is where we believe that someone can love us just the way we are. And when we bring good behavior into the mix, children stop believing that we can love them when they make a mistake. A reward can be very satisfying in the moment, but not receiving a reward can cause emotions like frustration. I wanted the reward and I couldn't earn it, which can lead to acting out and aggression or meltdowns. And some of you know that. You've seen those meltdowns that come when the kid thought he should have earned the reward and he didn't. Or alarm. What if my parents found out that I wasn't good enough? Anxiety goes up, possibly a meltdown as well. Or intensified pursuit. I will pay attention to and do only those things which will earn me a reward. And as we know, that results in performance, but not necessarily true learning. And also, it's very exhausting to be good all the time. Now, there's a whole nother layer here, and I'm going to try and go through this relatively quickly. You can take the time, perhaps afterwards, to read this on the slides or to read a handout that I've actually got on our website. But digital behavior management systems bring this to yet another level that, unfortunately, I think is quite difficult for our children to handle, because really at this point the parents not know how many points the kid earns. I'm not talking, and I'm not naming any one of the systems. I am not talking about the systems that allow a teacher to let a parent know about all the activities and things that they do in the classroom. I am talking about the systems where the parent is able digitally to get a record of how many rewards or points the child has actually earned. The thing about it, again, what do we know? They're very aware of the behavior. They want to be acknowledged, and they put a lot of effort into acting in a way that will get noticed by the teacher. And this is what occurred to me. Well, if you're putting all your energy into trying to behave properly, how much energy is left for true learning? We all know, as much as we do it, multitask, we all know the brain does not function very well when it's trying to multitask. So if a child is aware that the teacher's around them and is now noticing the behavior, they're going to be aware of how they're sitting, of how they're talking, and not necessarily focusing on what they're doing. It isn't going to help with the learning process. And what if the child's really having a bad day? They're feeling sick. They can't sit still. They're immature, or they have an overreactive brain. They find the behavioral demands of a day completely overwhelming, or they try very hard and the teacher doesn't notice. Or a child consistently receives fewer points than her classmates. How does this make children feel when those numbers are being recorded, yet they didn't get some of those numbers? And the other thing that occurred to me was, when a teacher or the other adults in the classroom are occupied with trying to monitor behavior, can they really be attending to the other needs of the students? Isn't there a better use of their time? And if the parents receive the results before seeing their child, now they start asking about the performance, and in the nicest way. Oh, honey, I saw you only got 10 points today. Well, remember how it felt to that little guy. I only got 35 points. Can you still love me? The child is aware that the parent knows. And at least the happy face summarizes the whole day at the end of the day. Now it becomes much more exacting. Again, the alarm increases with our good kids. Adults are not seeing safe because now they're kind of reporting behavior to the parents. And I know that some of the systems allow a parent to be alerted about when a behavior hasn't, when inappropriate behavior has happened. I don't know how I would feel if at 10 o'clock in the morning I got a ding on my cell phone saying my child had done an inappropriate behavior. I would not be in a good state all day. And imagine, so were parents wondering, the child is anticipating all day that the parent's going to be the displeasure of the parent. If frustration and alarm increase, meltdowns are likely to increase, anxiety is likely to go up. And one little boy said to his mother, he said, "Mom, I had a choice, Mom. I could have gotten a negative point for being late, or I could have gotten a negative point for pushing somebody, because there were three of us that were all trying to run to the classroom and be on time. And Mom, if I had pushed those boys, I would have been on time, but I didn't want to push those boys." It's very difficult. There's no explanation for why that happened. So, and again, the parent is desperately trying to fix the behavior, or can at some point start to get very upset with school staff. So these are just the kinds of things that occur to me about what might be happening behind the scenes when these kinds of systems are used.
If I may add, Eva, one more thing, because I've experienced it directly with my daughter. The system can also be publicly displayed in classroom in front of all students. So that too could be, embarrassing for the students. It becomes competition.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, very much so. And then the last set of concerns that came up were just the fact that these systems actually, Class Dojo, for example, collects and retains recorded data on all students. What can happen? And they own, the question is, who owns this behavior data? Could it be used in the future? So again, I don't want to raise huge things here, but there are some other issues as well. So they're not innocuous or harmless, in my opinion. They have been shown to make attachment conditional, to affect relationships with parents, to cause feelings of shame and even possibly hopelessness, to increase alarm and anxiety, even among good children, to discourage and decrease natural behavioral tendencies, the desire to be good for one teacher. I remember one of my colleagues' son said to her, "Mom, we get enough chocolates here at home. My teacher doesn't need to buy my good behavior with chocolates. I want to be good for him." Caring for others, trying new things, creativity and risk, which is really what we want in learning. These are all things, the joy of learning is affected by these kinds of systems. All right, so what do we do instead? Well, most of you probably already know what I'm going to say next, because you have heard me ad nauseum talk about the interventions that we recommend through the Center of Excellence. So I won't spend a lot of time on them, because we have all of these things are recorded and available on our website. Basically, here are the general things. Maximize attachment, compensate for the effects of immaturity, build a village of attachment, minimize the effects of peers, and allow for emotional expression and play. So we need to engage the attachment instincts, collect before you direct, get into the space, the eyes, a smile, and a nod. Got a particularly challenging student, how can I get the child to look at me? We need to speak softly. We need to say their name with warmth and affection. We need to have those smiling eyes. And then we need to say, does this child really give me permission to exist in their presence, for me to guide them and teach them? When you are in the classroom, I know many of you do a lovely job of greeting your children, of helping them with dressing, undressing, doing all of those things. But remember, when you step into the leading role, into the teaching role, this is another time in which you really need to get the eyes, the nod, and the smile. So you need to actually have a getting started ritual that engages all the senses, especially the mouth, because kids want to talk to each other. So find something that focuses on the teacher. The simplest one is, good morning, students, good morning, teacher. That's the easiest one. And you keep doing it until all of the children respond and say it. And you keep that smile on your face, because all children want to see our happy face. You need to use it every time you see the students. And the idea is, you say, good morning, students. A few of them say good morning back. You say, oh, I didn't hear everybody. Good morning, students. Good morning, miss. Good morning, sir. Oh, a few more. Let's see how loud we can be. Good morning, sir. Now there's a moment of silence. Now you're still smiling. Now you have all eyes on you and you can give your directions. Now you can let them know what you want them to do as their teacher and their guide. Transitions are a big one. How can we, because we want our kids to do lots of activities. It's noisy. They're talking to each other. How do we get them their attention without raising our voice. Well, again, you got to do something that's incompatible with other behavior. And the alternate behavior should be fun. Songs, chants, funny gestures. There's a chart here, a lot of you use a Scooby-Doo, and the student answers, where are you? And remember, as soon as the student uses their mouth, they can't be talking to somebody else. And again, you don't just go Scooby-Doo, where are you? Or ready, set, you bet. You wait until everybody says it. And again, you make it fun. You make playfulness can be contagious, so you want all eyes on you. You want that smile, the silence with you in a smiling position, not in the, I've had it with you, but, great. Now give your directions. It's amazing if people practice this. And I hope some of you already have, because I've said this many, many times, the difference it can make in those transitions with kids. Create a quiet corner. I love this one. It's just underneath a little bench that was in the classroom. This is a basket. Pillows, even in high school, we can find them. Some of our children need to withdraw to be able to deal with all the noise that goes on in the classroom. Yeah. We have a whole recording on it, and I've added a few of the links, but we do have lots of examples of what you can do. Or a movement station with the selected exercise posters. Sometimes a child needs to leave the classroom. Absolutely. We're reaching our limit, or the child needs to be away from other children. Let's find a safe place to send them, either the quiet corner in the room, or send them to the behavior technician, the office, the nurturing support center. Send them to someone to deliver something. I had one teacher, a slightly older person who was not healthy, and this little girl was very, very challenging. And I said to her, do you know when this little one enters the classroom that it's going to be a difficult morning? And she said, yes, I do. And she said, my heart just starts racing, my blood pressure goes up, and I just roll my eyes. And the poor little girl, that's what she saw, was a teacher who was just like, please help me. I want to do well with her. Please don't don't have a crisis. I said, you know what, when you're feeling that way, I think it would be way better, because I know what you want to do is organize your class. Why don't you send her to somebody with a book or with an envelope? You've got mail, something which gives the child a valid reason for leaving the classroom, sends them to another adult. The other adult gets the envelope and goes, oh, the teacher needed 10 minutes to organize the class. Thank you very much, honey. Just sit here for a minute. I'll send you back. And the teacher actually did that. And I said to her, how did you feel when the child came back to the classroom? She said, you know what? I was happy to see her. That's what some kids need. And of course, if we did have to send the child out of the classroom, we need to let them know that the relationship is still intact. Now, immaturity. When that brain is not functioning, when that prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, when the brain just isn't yet ready to do and to manage all of the emotions that are inside of all the impulses that are inside of us, we have to basically become the prefrontal cortex on the outside. So analyze the environment and schedule for where and when trouble happens. Getting ready to work, provide extra pencils, extra erasers, extra calculators. I don't know how many times I've been in a classroom where I have seen a child spend 10 minutes trying to find a pencil. And I'm thinking to myself, and the teacher says, he needs to be responsible for his own materials. I'm thinking, okay, so the lesson today is responsibility about finding a pencil, not about the language arts that you wanted him to do. And trust me, if I went into a bank and I didn't have a pen with me, and I said to the teller, excuse me, but I forgot my pen, the teller would not say, well, Eva, you're not responsible enough to bring your own pen. Clearly, you're not responsible enough to withdraw money. They would give me a pen. They would just give me a pen. So make it easy for the child to find the tools that they need, and provide it with a lot of happiness, and provide it generously. Yes. Then make it easy for them to find their copybooks and their other materials. Again, some of you have good practices around that. Again, I've seen other children rooting around in their desk for 20 minutes trying to find their language arts book. Pencil sharpener. Well, where is it located? Does it always work? Does it make noise? Or do I just have a whole lot of sharpened pencils available? Put the student desk to where the least disruptions will happen. Have a plan for rainbow days. These are days when students have more than 3 teachers in a day. The reality is that's when you're going to get your worst behavior. If you are the French teacher who is the 5th teacher, and I saw a classroom like that, she was the 5th teacher the kids had on that day, because their regular teacher, was part-time and was not there on that day, and so they gave all the specialists. Well, by the time that poor old teacher got to that class, at the end of the day, the kids had it with having strangers in their room. So you know what? We need to figure out a way of making it palatable for the kids to yet have another teacher. And for some of the kids, where can they go to be with a significant attachment figure if they can't handle yet another stranger? We need to be very, very careful not to penalize students for adult decisions. Rainbow days are an adult decision, not a student choice. Set up your environment to help guide acceptable behavior. And you all know this. Use visual prompts, lining up, do masking tape or floor decals. My goodness. We've all learned how to use decals. Every time I go into Loblaws and wait to pay at the cashier, I look down to see if I'm standing on the right spot. It monitors my behavior. And circle time, masking tape, chairs, hula hoops, carpet squatches. These are all ways in which we make it easier for a child to do what they have to do. Seat work and writing, when the focus wanders, fold the paper, highlight a few that you want to have completed. These are for the unfocused child. Sometimes for some kids, we have to say, okay, they're going to do 3 things, then they can go and have free time. They've done their work, not necessarily the same work as the other. And sometimes we need to look at the whole group. And remember, in this time of COVID, our children are in high alarm. They're much more exhausted. We might just need to give them brain breaks. Sometimes it's not that important to get that assignment done, although I know when you're trying to do report cards, it might be. With the agitated child, again, try and provide an environment, let them have some movement, acceptable fidget items, sufficient elbow room, movement breaks, have that active corner, active jobs, use brain breaks. Again, we have a whole thing on brain breaks at our website, and try and take your kids outdoors as much as you can. The fidget items, the weighted items, these all help these kinds of kids. Different kinds of workstations. So a child who is more comfortable standing can do their work. A different kind of seating options as well. None of these is going to magically change behavior, but they can be helpful for children who are having a hard time sitting as still as we need them to sit. We need to have a plan for challenging behaviors, and this is where your school team comes in. We try and change the circumstances rather than trying to actually change and control the child. Anticipate and prevent. Where are they going to have trouble? Most kids have trouble at recess. We might need to give them extra supervision in the hallway, in the bathrooms, lunchtime. A substitute teacher. And by the way, just a little backtrack here. If we can help children manage recess, hallways, bathrooms, and lunchtime, they will actually come back to the classroom in a calmer way, in a calmer state. And it will be easier to manage their behavior. But if they have just spent the last 10 minutes sitting outside the principal's office because they're yet again in trouble, trust me, when they come into your classroom, they are going to be difficult to manage. And again, with substitute teachers, might need to do introductions or have an alternate person that the child can be with. We really need to be a traffic director rather than the police who give consequences or rewards for behavior. We need to build this village of attachment, surround the child with as many caring adults as possible, help them to form attachments to the adults and the adults to form attachments to the students. If you are going to be the 5th teacher in 5 days, you might need to actually do a really big job of collecting the kids. Or maybe the teacher who is leaving, who's finally gotten the kids attached to her, can say, oh, my friend is coming. Oh, she's coming. She's so looking forward to having you. We can do things to prime attachment with children. We just need to be aware of when that priming really needs to be done. And then, of course, creating the positive relationship with parents, because when parents are happy with the school, it's easier for the children to attach to us. And unfortunately, and so we can do this through positive phone calls, positive notes, welcoming them warmly, even when there's trouble, and not using the behavior management systems. Minimize the influence of peers. Remember, poor behavior is going to happen when students are spending unsupervised time with other immature beings. Let them find a way to spend time in the presence of those who are more mature. And again, I know now with COVID, we can't cross age groups, but in the olden days when we could get the grade 6s to help with the grade 2s, it made a huge difference. Find dignified ways of keeping them separated, helping in another class, helping others in the school. Again, you have to modulate that based on what you're allowed to do right now. And then provide outlets for emotion, give opportunities for play. We don't forget the arts, music, drama, writing, singing, rap. These are all things we should not let go by the wayside simply because we're trying to recover academically. The academics will come, but the emotional release is really important. Those of you that are working with younger children, provide lots of time for play, and even for the older children, especially in this time of high alarm. You know, we found escalating diagnosis of childhood depression and ADHD has actually paralleled the loss of play. And we have a whole bunch of stuff on emotion and play on our website. Playful release, dance parties, snowball, paper snowballs, clapping games, pool noodle drumming, Simon Says, stomping, pretending emotion, pretending to be animals, pretending playing monster games. Be creative. Use these as a brain break. Use emotional play-based brain breaks, and then it'll be easier to bring your kids back. Concluding thoughts that I had. Well, if you've been using a reward system, and I know some of you actually have no control over this because it isn't your reward system. It's a reward system that someone else has imposed. So you might need to ask those other people to watch the recording. So I haven't actually thought about what you guys can do. But anyway, something will maybe come up. But here's my thoughts if you've been using it in your classroom. So if you decided as a result of listening to this, maybe I want to do things differently, or maybe you were already thinking you needed to do things differently, do it slowly and be prepared for a reaction. It won't go smoothly. Obviously, kids don't like change. None of us like change. And if they get a sense that they're not going to get rewards anymore, they might be a little bit disgruntled. But you can frame it as, you know what? We've all been working really, really hard, and your behavior is just getting so much better. You know, we're just going to take a little break from this. Now, what are you going to do with all those little things that you've collected that you've been giving to kids as prizes? Well, you know what? Start giving out the prizes randomly. Oh, anybody whose name starts with A to D is going to get a fancy pencil or a sticker today. And the other ones will say, well, when do I get mine? Oh, I guess it'll be tomorrow. I don't know. I'm going to see who gets them tomorrow. At our Nest program, the teachers still had a really hard time with not giving, little stickers and whatever. Finally, they realized, oh, they just put a little sticker pot in the middle of the class. Now, remember, these were 8 of the most significant children with the significant behavior disorders in the school board that were all gathered together in this class. They were all 6 and 7 years old, not very mature. But the teacher put out this little pot of stickers and she said, when you think you deserve a sticker, you can go get a sticker and put it onto your page. Now, of course, a couple of the boys or one of the little girls went and got a whole bunch of stickers and put stickers all over the page. But after a while, it was amazing. They went up to the teacher and said, I did really good work today. I gave myself a sticker. Now where does that, and when I haven't used the words intrinsic or extrinsic, but my goodness, that was coming from inside of the child, not from the outside. Now you have to explain to the parents that you're going to be doing things differently. And honestly, most of them will be relieved. Not all of them. It'll be a challenge, but I think you just need to just say that. And I think they will be. And then focus on helping the students to get things right. You're going to have more time when you're not monitoring and justifying anymore. How many of you have had to spend 10 minutes explaining to a child why they did or did not deserve a particular, reward or star or whatever? And then you need to ask the school team for helping you to create plans for your most challenging students. And remember, have fun with your students. Use brain breaks and play. The more you smile and laugh with children, the more they get attached to you. And when they're attached to you, they want to behave for you. So final thoughts. Alexander van der Heyer, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. It's only in the context of a safe attachment that children can grow and develop. We need to provide generously, forgive easily, the child and ourselves, feel our sadness about what didn't work and about what we can't do. And many of you, by the way, have lots of sadness inside of you because you are trying so hard to meet the emotional needs of your kids and the academic needs of your kids. And it is a very, very difficult task. But have faith in nature's plan. Children, when they grow and develop, will be able to do the things we would like them to be able to do. It's just going to take more time. So obviously our website is there. We have a members website now. The password for it is CEBM members, all as one word, capitals and small letters, as it is on here. And you will find lots and lots of information there that will help you if you want to do things differently. I just want to remind you as well that there is kind of like a continuum of interventions. If you go down to the bottom of our home page, you will actually find a recording and again, a whole host of resources that you can use in your classroom as an alternative to rewards for managing behavior. And finally, I thank you so much for signing up, for coming. We are going to ask you, and Catherine's going to put this into the chat.
Yes.
We have an evaluation, a small evaluation. The ministry is wanting us to track the effect of some of our interventions, things that we're doing. And so if you wouldn't mind giving us some feedback about how you found the session. And there will be another one on Thursday, December the 2nd, where I'm going to, in 2 parts, look at the whole concept of bullying and what happens and so on. So I will stop here.
Wonderful. Somebody asked the question about your handout. And so please know that when Eva reminded everybody of this presentation, she attached the handout in the email, but also know that the handout's available both on the homepage of our main website. And if you don't see it there, on our events page, I always keep all of the recordings. So this session's being recorded right now. You will have access to the recording and to the handout that will remain there for as long as the website's up. And so, Eva, thank you so much for this presentation. I saw, a lot of people saying I'm so inspired right now. There was some great feedback. If I may add my own thoughts really briefly, I think the one thing that really, listening to you speak, is moving away from trying to control the child and thinking that you actually have the influence to control a child, and rather move towards creating scaffolding to be able to support whichever child in their own needs. And so that's the piece that I hold on to. So there was a question, I will read it. Just wondering what your thoughts are on ABC charts as tools to identify the cause or function of the behavior.
Well, the thing about it is that human behavior is complex. So for example, a child who melts down, we might say the antecedent was that the teacher asked him to put away his coat. Right. And then the behavior was that he had a meltdown, and the consequence, I don't know what the consequence was, but anyway, people would say people paid attention to him and they reinforced his bad behavior. But you have to remember that frustration isn't just in the moment. A child can we had some of our children in our NEST program that brought a huge load of frustration with them because of what they were living at home. And so, if the antecedent is what was the trigger, but what is the true cause, then yes, it's very, very helpful. And the consequence is really neither here nor there, because the behavior did not come as a result of the consequence. The behavior came because of the emotional state of the child. So the C should be, what are we going to do differently to help this child when they are in that emotional state? So it can be used. Actually, this is one of the tasks that I have for myself this year, is a planning chart for especially our explosive children. And I have a whole sheet that helps you to analyze what came before and what you can do next. So it's a variation of the ABC, but it's a more sophisticated variation, I believe, than some of the more behavioral ones.
A comment from someone, I'll read it. The difficulty that I see is the pressure that teachers are feeling with respect to reaching the academic goals, and thus are not feeling comfortable with taking the time to put these activities into place, for example, brain breaks.
Well, honestly, if we understood how the brain worked, we would be taking more brain breaks, not fewer, because when the brain is relaxed, when the brain isn't trying to manage a whole bunch of emotions, and this is the thing about it, we get this for ourselves as adults. You get home and your spouse says, you know what, I got this letter today and we've got to make this decision. And you look at your spouse and you say, I can't even think right now. Give me half an hour to calm down, to relax, give me some food in my stomach, and then we'll think about it, right? And so we've got to be so careful, because the pressure that we have and the pressure that teachers are feeling are actually working counterintuitively to the child actually being able to learn. I know it's not easy. I think part of what we as professionals, as teachers, need to do is sometimes just say, you know what, I'm going to close my door, I'm going to pull down the blind, I am going to have a brain break. and I'll just do what I can with my kids. And actually, I think in the long run, most of those kids will perform more. You know, if you have a good relationship with your kids in April and May, you can start putting more pressure on them. But the reality is, if we just keep putting pressure and pressure and pressure, less and less learning is going to happen. It's really counterintuitive, but it's what the neuroscience is telling us.
If I may add, Eva, I mean, on our website, we do have a session dedicated to brain breaks. And I did include there some literature on the benefits of brain breaks. And it does demonstrate with research that children who are allocated some time for brain breaks actually have a much better concentration and are able to accomplish more tasks in lesser time. And so it doesn't necessarily take away from some of the academic goals that are there. They're actually able to combine both in the same time. And so it's for you to try and to see with your group. Let's see. Okay, about using reward systems. This pressure seems to come from administration. How do we use our champions to promote no rewards?
Well, you know what? This is a dialogue that you need to have in your schools. It's something that you need to, you know, read Alfie Kohn. Alfie Kohn has an incredible website, some very short little articles that he can read. I mean, you know, don't necessarily take it from me, take it from him, have a dialogue about it. But you know, the one thing, and I've been saying this for years, and I'm really sorry to have to say this to schools, but all those kindness days are actually making our kids less kind. You know, I mean, I've seen that. So, oh, today is kindness day. Today is generosity day. Today is this, and then we're going to catch you being generous, you know, and we're going to put a star on the door in the classroom that is the most generous is going to be. Actually, we're creating a generation of kids who don't want to be kind anymore. Boy, did we ever get it wrong. And I'm really sorry. And I knew that, and I've been saying this for years, and I've been trying. And then when I read the research, it's like, whoa. It is really clear, but it's so ingrained in our way of thinking that we have to reward, you know, social emotional skills. We have to reward good behavior. And someone asked, is praise reward? Yes, it is. But you can appreciate. Way back in the early part of my career, I remember giving had a talk called "The Difference Between Evaluative Praise and Appreciative Praise." Of course, you can smile at a child and say, "Oh, you know, thanks. I know you really wanted to ask a question, and you know, thanks for holding it in." But you're not saying "Good job of holding it in." You're just thanking the kid, and you know, and it so much more happens from a little smile, a little nod, your eyes lighting up. And the child doesn't need, when you say good job, you know, good job waiting, immediately the child brains goes to, oh, I got to wait to be loved. When you just smile at a child, it isn't necessarily that explicit. Children need to believe that we delight in their presence and have permission to be in our presence with all of their faults, with all of their immaturity, with all of their emotions. And when that happens, they will turn to us and they will want to do better. I've had, you know, even the teenagers that we were working with who had many, many, many issues would want, from time to time, finally say to the adults, you know, you believed in me when nobody else believed in me. You were kind to me when I didn't deserve you being kind. I knew that I was special to you, even though I was being really awful. They know it and they notice it. We have to be so careful. Anyway, it's a big change. It's a huge change that we have to do.
One last one. Someone was saying that find that children don't really understand how to be kind, and that how can we, through our adult modeling, can show children how to. And was just curious about your thoughts on that.
Well, yes, they like how to be kind, but the impulse to be kind is in children. I think the sad thing is what we're seeing is the result of too much praise for being kind. But anyway, of course, modeling it, letting it happen, talking about kindness, but not praising it when it happens. That's the difference. Explaining it, but not praising it, not noticing it, not bringing it to kids' attention. That's where the difference is. And it's so hard because we're teachers and we want, we think learning comes from praise, but it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's tough. It's kind of like the end of my career. I'm going to be. This is kind of one of the things that I've just really wanted to share with people. But there's, again, I will try and put together a list of readings, a list of places that you can go to find out about these things, and then have that dialogue with key people in your school, and just bit by bit, just try and ease away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than having an assembly to award the kids who are kind, have an assembly where you can have fun. Have a dance assembly, have for everybody. I mean, that's the other sad thing. The kids who need it the most earn it the least.
Right.
And again, I just want to let you know, there was a school at English Montreal, the St. Raphael school, that went from children having to earn fun Fridays to them not only having fun Fridays, but having fun Wednesdays for all the kids. And the behavior in the school improved 1,000% when they did that. It really made a difference. So we've got to find ways of getting away from a system that actually does not help our children at all.
And so this is our time. And thank you so much for it's not always a easy after school from 4 to 5, and so thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to listen to this wonderful presentation. I hope that it answered some of your concerns, and that it enlightened. It sure did for me, Eva. Some of the research there I wasn't aware, so thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And for those of you that don't have a lot of control of it, just do what you can when you see that child to be happy to see them for who they are. It'll make a difference, even if you can't change the whole system. So all the best, everyone. Hang in there, and I'm sure we'll see some of you in a few weeks.
And please, for the survey, if you don't have time to fill it out today, you take the link. You can fill it out, as soon as you can. So thank you so much.
And we'll put the link up on our webpage as well.
Yes,
for those
yes,
of you
course, we'll do.
yeah, for sure. Great.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
Stop the recording.